All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, October 10th meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. We'll go ahead and start with a roll call. Chair Lisa Hanson, present. Vice Chair Jacob Miller.
Present.
Alder Jim Hutchinson.
Present.
Commissioner Cindy Bremer is excused. Commissioner Darius Daniels.
Present.
Commissioner Ken Ravinsky.
Present.
And Commissioner Michael Paradek.
Present.
Right. And then moving on to the approval of the agenda for the October 10th, 2022 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alder Hutchinson, second by Vice Chair Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then moving on to the approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes from the September 12th, 2022 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Was that a motion by Alder Hutchinson, a second by Commissioner Paradek? Is that, I missed the faces in the, is that correct? Okay. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then moving on to regular business. Item number 1, communication from council. Review for possible modifications to section 44-1580, residential uses, short-term rentals from Alder Weary's district.
So Alder Weary had sent a communication through the council to investigate what ability the city has for short-term rentals to regulate and what other communities are doing. We have had a major uptick in short-term rentals, which are probably to the tune of 200% this year. So it's a lot. And if you know, Alderman Weary's district is right around the stadium, so he's been getting a lot of communication from residents. Yes, we would ask just that you refer it to staff.
Okay, so we're just looking to refer this to staff at this point?
Yes, please.
I'll move to refer this to staff.
Second.
We got a motion by Alder Hutchinson and a second by Commissioner Paradek. Any further discussion?
It would be good to have at least a bulleted concerns. I think I know what the concerns are, but I guess when we get something back from staff, it would be good to know what they looked at.
Certainly, yeah, and in your packet there was a little description of his communication. But yeah, as we go forward with this, the attorney's office and the planning department will both look at it, and there would be coming to the planning commission.
Very good. Thank you.
Go ahead, Neil.
Just a couple of comments on that. It is a hot topic, certainly with both the city of Green Bay and including the village of Ashwaubenon. They're also dealing with this same issue. So staff is looking to kind of coordinate with them on what their approaches have been and some of the challenges they've seen. Certainly, property maintenance, noise complaints, parking issues are kind of the most common things I think that are being dealt with. But I think we're seeing in the context of affordable housing and home ownership, we're seeing some of these single family ranch homes that are around the stadium are some of the more affordable in the community, and they're getting bought up and flipped into these rentals that are so they're actually taking them actually making our affordable housing stock even less and even more competitive. So there are some bigger picture issues, I guess, in terms of the general maintenance and associated with them too. There is also an overall housing concern over what it kind of does to the market as well. But so I think we'll be sure to kind of address that. There's also been just the history on this. There's been some pretty serious restrictions put on municipalities' ability to regulate these by the state legislature. So it's kind of really ascertaining exactly what we can do from a zoning and other regular licensing and listing standpoint. So making sure we have a full understanding of really what the current status of that is, as well as what are maybe some of our options on proceeding in terms of regulating the use. So.
Okay, good.
All right, thank you, Neil. All right, so we have a motion by Alder Hutchinson and a second by Commissioner Paradek to refer this to staff. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then that will go through, I guess that gets referred back to staff then at that point. All right, item number 2 is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Times. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or are only providing information in this matter, and your comments or concerns. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. Questions may be asked during the public hearing, but will not be answered until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. To speak during this public hearing, you may unmute yourself at the bottom of the screen, use the raise hand function on Zoom, or physically raise your hand if you're using the video feature, or if you're calling in on internet audio, it's *6 to unmute yourself. You will now open the public hearing on agenda item number 2, public hearing on request to rezone properties located in the 2500 block of University Avenue from neighborhood commercial to general commercial and rezone portions of parcel 21-301 from NC to varied density residential submitted by Community and Economic Development on behalf of RTH LLC, Meyer Family Investment Corp., and UHAGB LLC property owners.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Here's a brief introduction to this public hearing. This item is for rezoning for the 3 parcels that have the yellow stars over them. At our last meeting, there was a rezoning for this parcel right here from NC to C1. So this will be a continuation of that rezone for this strip on the 2500 block of University Avenue, and then clean up on this larger parcel in the back that is primarily residential apartments. There's still some leftover rezoning, NC zoning here that we're going to clean up and bring into the R3 zone. The other 2 will be going to C1 to match this parcel here.
Okay, thank you, Steph. So then with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from parties who are wanting to speak in favor, in opposition, or would just like to provide information. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item. Item 3, consideration with possible action on request to rezone properties located in the 2500 block of University Avenue from neighborhood commercial to general commercial and rezone portions of parcel 21-301 NC to varied density residential submitted by Community and Economic Development on behalf of RTH LLC, Meyer Family Investment Corp., and UAB LLC property owners.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Again, to reorient you to this location, this is the Festival Foods on the east side of town, University Avenue, which cuts across here, and then Huron Road that goes out. This parcel here was the 2650 University Avenue, was rezoned for a particular development. We had initially anticipated rezoning this entire strip during that meeting. The publications were done in time, so that did not occur. So we're now considering this just a cleanup item of this zoning here. So for NC and C1, the main differences are the dimensional requirements within those zoning districts, in particular the floor area ratio. It's much higher and therefore making it much more dense in the NC districts. Initially, when this parcel back here was getting developed, they had thought there would be a much more robust commercial frontage here and possibly some higher density residential that would be part of this. As this parcel has been developed and changed ownership a few times, and as the city scope has kind of changed in this neighborhood, we're realizing that the C1 district is far more appropriate for this entire frontage strip here. So again, these two parcels here will be going to C1, and that small portion right here in pink and the larger portion here are both NC. We'll be flipping to R3 to match the rest of the parcel. With that, we are recommending approval of the request.
Okay, thank you, Steph. Were there any questions for staff or discussion amongst the commission?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Ravinsky and a second by Vice Chair Miller. Is there anything anyone wanted to add? We'll go ahead with a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then that will go forward to the next city council meeting, which is that the 18th?
Yes.
Okay, for October 18th. Moving on to item number 4, public hearing on request to rezone the property located at 727 North Webster Avenue from varied density residential to public institutional, submitted by Community and Economic Development on behalf of the Redevelopment Authority.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To tee this one up a little bit, this one's even easier than the last one. This is Fire Station 2 here to orient you in the transit station. This small parcel right here is 727 North Webster, which is our subject parcel. It's part of this larger park-like thing. It is not actually an official city park, but we call it the Sculpture Garden, Sculpture Park. There's a lot of different public art pieces here. The goal is to consolidate all of these parcels together at one point. And before we do that, we want to clean up the zoning. And this is the only parcel that was left over with any sort of remnant zoning besides PI. So we're just looking to rezone the small portion so it matches the rest of the zoning of the parcels by it.
All right, thank you so much, Steph. And then we're looking to hear from interested parties who would like to speak on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding item, item number 5, consideration with possible action on request to rezone the property located at 727 North Webster Avenue from varied density residential to public institutional, submitted by Community and Economic Development on behalf of the Redevelopment Authority property owners.
Thank you. Again, this is University Avenue, Webster Avenue. Future land use and a comprehensive plan shows the whole area for other public or semi-public uses. And again, as you can see, this entire block face has the PI zoning, which we're looking for. So it's just rezoning this one parcel from R3 to PI. And we are recommending approval of the request.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, so motion by Commissioner Ravinsky and a second by Commissioner Braddock. I saw Jake's lips moving, but then I didn't hear his voice, so.
I was on mute, sorry.
Okay, all right, so, I'm sorry, what was that?
So whatever works, as long as we got it.
Okay, all right, sorry, all right. Motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Commissioner Braddock. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then that will go through the council on the 18th. Moving on to item number 6, consideration with possible action on request to discontinue a utility easement between Robert Lane and Challenger Drive from Beth Drive to Jokey Drive, submitted by City of Green Bay Department of Public Works, petitioner, multiple property owners.
I'm just here to provide you all with the most boring items you could possibly have on plan commission today. I'm so sorry. So this is the location of this easement. This is on the city's far east side, very residential in nature. As you can see from the exhibit that was attached, there are 3 separate 6-foot wide utility easements. The one furthest west, highlighted here in pink, is not being utilized. So we are recommending approval of the discontinuance of this easement. All other utility providers are within the other 2 easement areas. So we no longer need this easement area.
And I'm assuming that this absolutely does not affect any property owners whatsoever.
No, it gives them 6 feet back that they could potentially begin now if they want to.
Exciting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, a second by Commissioner Daniel. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and moving on to item number 7 then. Public hearing on request to create a text amendment to Chapter 33, Article 13, Divisions 1-11, or 1-2, I guess. Floodplain Overlay District Ordinance, Sections 44-1041 to 1368, Green Bay Municipal Code, submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Yeah, that worked right there. That was no problem. So a quick background on that. This would be the floodplain text amendment. So this is a revision of the floodplain code that we have, that we received from DNR. It happens every 8-10 years or so, and this would be the change to it.
All right, thank you. All right, so looking to hear from parties who are looking to speak in opposition, what's the opposite of opposition? Oh my God.
In favor?
Look to speak in favor
Favor.
or against, or you have any information to provide. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, public hearing is now closed. Moving on then to the corresponding item, item number 8, consideration with possible action on request to create a text amendment to Chapter 33, Article 13, Divisions 1-11, Floodplain Overlay District Ordinance, Sections 44-1041 to 1368, Green Bay Municipal Code, submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Okay, so this is an update to the floodplain code itself. We received this from DNR, as noted, back in 2006 and 2013, and we received the model ordinance back in 2021. The vast majority of this is the same language that we have in the code already. These updates come, and we need to do it. It's required as part of our way of keeping our flood insurance rates lower by having this a part of our code. So as mentioned, we received model ordinances back then. We got this in 2021. We had 12 months to go ahead and put this in the code. Why did we wait that long? The one change that came to this is the establishment of a new district, the Coastal Floodplain District. With that is right up along the bay and the mouth of the Fox on the east side of the bay. It is what it states. It's along the coast itself. It's an area of special flood hazard extending offshore to the inland limit of the primary frontal dune along the open coast or other areas subject to high velocity waves from storms. So right now, our maps that we have are from 2009. We have draft maps that should get approved here soon, but they have not been approved yet. In those draft maps, one of the additions is Coastal Floodplain District. That area already is part of flood zone as it is right now. It's a different designation for what's happening right there. That said, we have no new maps to give right now because they're still in the hands of FEMA to give us the final approval. Because we need to go ahead and approve these here 12 months past the October 2021 initial ordinance, we need to do this update now. So with the coastal floodplain being the main thing, there are a few just minor changes that looked over with the attorneys, but in general, it is pretty much the same code. The one thing that we're going to go ahead and ask is at the end of what you had for the draft itself, we just need to go ahead and add sections 44-1343 to 1368 reserved for just any sort of future usage. So with that, we'd recommend approval of the amendments to Chapter 44, Article 12, sections 44 through 44-1041 to 1368, and then adding the language section 44-1343 to 44-1368 reserved.
Okay, thank you so much, John. Any discussion amongst the commission or questions for staff?
Move to approve as per city staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, so motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, a second by Alder Hutchinson. I'm going to assume that there's no further discussion. So we'll go ahead with a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, and then that will go forward then to City Council for the 18th. Moving on to public hearing on request to amend text within Chapter 44, Article 19, Division 5, Landscaping, Sections 44-1964 to 1969 Green Bay Municipal Code.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this is, so it's the public hearing, obviously. About 3 years ago, the city started doing our, looking at opportunities to remove barriers to green infrastructure. About 2 years ago, we had a code audit done. And, well, this is just a public hearing, but yes. About 2 years ago, we had a code audit done. The results of that came to Plan Commission, I believe it was in May of this year. May 9th, actually. Those were forwarded on to the plan, or from the Plan Commission to the City Council. And then they were, this particular section was held for more public outreach. So that outreach had taken place. And now we are bringing those back.
Thank you, Dave. And then with the public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone in favor, in opposition, or looking to provide information only. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward, and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding item, item number 10, consideration with possible action to amend text within Chapter 44, Article 19, Division 5, Landscaping, Sections 44-1964 to 1969, Green Bay Municipal Code.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Okay, so as I kind of explained before, this has sort of been a 3-year process. We had an entire code audit. Several sections, Chapter 16, Chapter 24 were amended and adopted by Council, but Chapter 44 edits to the landscape sections, as you've listed, actually received some concern primarily from the Brown County Home Builders Association and a few engineers that work with them. The council had basically placed it on hold, sent it back to the Plan Commission, and asked us to meet with them. In July of this year, we had done that. Their main concerns kind of revolved around 6 items. One was the transitional or buffer yard size, which you're probably kind of familiar with after last couple items. But also they were concerned with the ground cover that was allowed to go on islands and medians within parking lots. They were concerned with soil volumes and soil depths for tree plantings. Also the number of islands, they were concerned that those were too many. Also limitations on non-vegetative ground cover, which were included in the code changes. And then they had kind of a basic issue with the consistency of who is allowed to provide exceptions. Those were their big ones. There were quite a few other issues that came up. I mean, some of the topics were things such as, parking lots should be allowed to be redone exactly as they are no matter what, things like that. So we kind of worked through the Director of Community Development, Director of Public Works, the Forester, several staffers from the Planning Department and Engineering Departments met with the home builders, and 3 engineers from pretty prominent engineering firms that do a lot of work in the city. And what we basically did is went through all of the items of concern and talked about some others as well. And the 8 items that are in your staff report, summary of changes, and that are on your screen right now, were sort of the compromise or the final result of the discussion between the city itself and the home builders and their constituents. And I'll go over those just super quick. So one was reestablishing the existing regulation on buffer yards. So one of the changes that happened in the code amendment was that the buffer yards originally would be only when non-residential or multifamily abut residential uses or districts. The change made that buffer applicable to every district. So commercial next to commercial and whatnot. I don't think that was the intent, so we did remove that and clarified that it's only when non-residential are adjacent to residential. But we did increase that buffer by 5 feet in most cases, and the home builders really didn't have an issue with that. We removed a static requirement that soil depth be 3 feet for plantings and 1,200 cubic feet of soil. We replaced that with what I would call an administrative determination. The way that's basically worded in the packet is that soil volumes and depths associated per tree, that being small, medium, or large, shall be determined by the Director of Community Development or their designee with consultation with the city forester, but shall not be greater than the 1,200 cubic feet of volume or 3 feet of soil depth. And I'll add a little bit to that. So right now the forester is putting together an administrative list, basically tree types that are small, medium, or large, and what would be necessary for those to survive as far as soil volumes and soil types. That he's going to put together as an administrative item that we can augment, as species changes, as diseases come and go with plant materials. And so right now in the code itself, it's just sort of that more vague language, but it's going to refer to an administrative table, which is we will have in place hopefully for the council meeting. But that was the second one. The third one, they had a lot of issues, so the draft code added islands, 1 island per 10 stalls in a parking lot, where the original code was 1 per 15, so pretty significant increase. Felt that there was going to be a lot of stalls missing, being removed from parking lots that were being reconstructed, and that they felt that there was not a lot of stormwater benefit to that small amount of additional islands. So that was worked out mainly between our engineers and theirs, and it was determined the 1 per 15 is a suitable number. So that was removed. The 1 per 10 went back to the 1 per 15. We clarified also that landscaping internally for parking lots can either be islands or medians. So medians are sort of those big green strips you see in between facing parking stalls, where the islands are at the ends and kind of in the middle, and the stalls just butt up next to each other. So we clarified that you could use either. There are a few qualifiers if you're going to use a median. Obviously you have to have stalls that are abutting each other and at least a 40-foot or 40 stall lot for that to be effective. But we clarified that. It wasn't really clear, and the thought was that they needed to have both. So that has been cleared up in this draft. Number 5 was we are allowing decorative non-vegetative ground cover to be used in landscape islands and medians. The draft code severely limited the amount of non-vegetative ground cover, and it also limited the amount of turf grass. So again, in discussions, kind of had gone back, and we are now allowing decorative non-vegetative ground cover. So that could be something like river rock or mulch. You couldn't just use gravel or chunks of concrete or anything. But that is a significant change as well. Number 6, we clarified that any exceptions that are built into this landscape code are going to be made by the Director of Community Development or their designee. The original had, sometimes it was referring to the Director of Public Works, sometimes to the Zoning Administrator, and just for consistency, Sid actually had brought that up during the Plan Commission discussion as well in May. So those were all cleaned up. It all went back to the Director of Community Development or designee. We removed 2 sections that were general compliance sections in the draft code. They basically said that when certain things happen, you have to add these landscape amenities or landscape requirements. That is already taken care of in our nonconformity code in the municipal code. So it was redundant, and that often becomes problematic when codes are amended and you don't catch them all. So those were just removed. The nonconformity code does deal with that currently. And then the last change that was made, we adjusted the parking lot perimeter buffer design criteria, and that's mainly at the front where you're fronting the street, to align and be consistent with our fencing and landscape regulations in other sections of the code. So there was a buffer barrier of a certain height that was put in at 4 feet. Our code doesn't allow anything over 3. So it had direct conflict with that section of the code. So we just dropped that back down to 3 feet, and everything else is consistent. Those were the major changes that came out of the additional outreach. They are pretty significant. They do make quite a big difference. Right now, the home builders are reviewing it, and the engineers that they're employing are reviewing it. I don't see any of them on the meeting tonight, but we did let them know, because they didn't have a lot of time to review again, that we can always bring that up at council as well. If there's significant concerns, it can be held at council. But again, these were all negotiated during that meeting, so I don't think there's going to be any surprises, but you never know. And so with that, with those changes, staff is recommending approval of the draft zoning ordinance that's in your packets as proposed.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Quick question, Dave. Thank you for the explanation on that. That helps a lot. Jumping back to item number 5, you mentioned the decorative stone. Could you explain further the removal of the cap on grass?
Sure. Let me kind of move over to that section code that I have here. So the way the regulation had been drafted was basically no more than 10% of the surface area of any landscape, island, or median were allowed to have non-vegetative or non-living material. So only 10% could be something other than live plants. Again, the purpose of that makes a lot of sense. Infiltration of stormwater, cleaning, that kind of thing. It also had that no more than 20% of that surface area could be grass. So it really encouraged shrubbery, mainly shrubbery, and low-lying plantings. Sort of the comments that came primarily from the engineers, not necessarily the home builders, was that type of material would be very difficult to maintain, to keep alive with the conditions that come in a parking lot: salt, brake dust, oils, people trampling over the top of it when they're going into a store or back to their cars. And they really wanted to keep primarily they use river rock or mulch currently, and they really wanted to keep that option available. From our standpoint, the amount of difference in stormwater that would be coming through there was negligible to our engineers. And also, you know, they do require a tree per every island, so that green space is there. The maintenance of bushes and things that grow up over 3 or 4 feet in a traffic circulation instance could also become problematic if not heavily maintained. Could block vision at corners. So staff kind of agreed with that and felt that the non-vegetative ground cover could work, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't throwing anything in there like gravel or just debris, that we wanted decorative stone. So again, river rock or you know, other type of decorative stones. I don't know if that answered your question, Ken?
No, it helped. I guess the cap on grass though, like does that mean that they could potentially just plant grass in the entire median plus the trees that are required?
Yes, currently they could do that in the draft.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
combination, you know, the only thing right now in that median that would be required, median or island, would be that tree. And even that could be removed if it was part of a stormwater treatment facility. They would have to relocate the tree somewhere else on the site, because they're still required to have that tree, but they could remove it from the island if approved as part of the stormwater management plan.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to be hung up on it. I know with what I've heard about grass is that it basically has the same runoff as like a paved parking lot, that it isn't really serving the purpose of absorbing water. And I'm not an engineer on that, but that is just what I heard. So I'm other than that, I don't know. I'm good with all the other changes. I'm just getting hung up on one thing, stuck in the weeds, I guess.
I got a question. Thank you, Ken, jogging my memory. Is there a gradation specification associated with a stone, decorative stone? Because the point is a good point. If you have a well-graded gravel, that's similar to asphalt as far as water being able to percolate in. If you have similar size stone like pea gravel, that's great for infiltration. Is there any kind of gradation associated with the decorative stone that can be used?
Currently in the code there is not. The decorative stone is really just those words alone. So the zoning administrator makes the call on that stone quality. And if a petitioner disagrees with that, they can go to the Board of Appeals for it's not a variance, but it's an interpretation of the code. So that's kind of where it's left right now. As far as if it's a stormwater designed facility, it's going to have to be reviewed and approved by Public Works as part of their stormwater plan. So again, if they're using something that doesn't infiltrate and that's part of their calculation for impervious surface and water storage or infiltration, that'll be picked up at that review. And at that point too, they'd be using engineered soils and there'd probably be more plants in it at that point as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think the comment from our engineers were that the amount of stormwater that's being absorbed in the smaller islands is negligible anyway. So whether it's stones or grass or mulch, it probably is going to function pretty similarly.
Okay, I think so. That clarifies it. Essentially, number 5 in this is more for for decoration of or to beautify the parking lot rather than stormwater or green infrastructure. It's more of a beautification mechanism.
Correct. It's sort of like that minimum threshold of what that can be in that island. You know, if you're going to use river rock or something, that's probably the, you know, I guess that's questionable on what you like, right? Mulch or river rock are probably the lowest standard. Other than that, probably some people put bushes in, some people put more landscaping or flowers. But again, it'd be the minimum.
And if it's meant to be part of the stormwater management, then it's going to be engineered differently. It won't be grass or the big, larger gradient stone. So, okay, I don't have any other questions then. I would also make a motion to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, a second by Commissioner Praddock. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead with a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then that will go forward to City Council for October 18th. Moving on to informational, Director's Report. Mr. Stickschulte.
There we go. Couldn't get unclicked there. There we go. Just a couple quick updates. We are excited to report that staff has a recommendation for a consultant for the JBS redevelopment site. So they're going to be hopefully contracting. RDA will be reviewing it tomorrow. Be selecting, basically generating 3 development concepts for the site and then refining that down to a recommended concept to proceed with. Then hopefully probably quickly after that, as a separate project, will be parkland development and then actually trying to get our first housing developer in on the site. So if everything goes according to speed, maybe in 23, if we can keep things moving quickly enough there. Staff is busy. We're filing all of our required TID documentation. If Plan Commission members RDA, we have 2 new creations, 2 transfers, an amended project list, and then 1 extension on all those different districts. So we're just wrapping up our paperwork for all of those this year. The 2 new creations are the Grandview Industrial Park, which Alder Hutchison is very much familiar with, and then the 222 Cherry Street down here, the Cherry Street project is where Peter Nugent has got a possible project happening on the boss's site there. So with those 2 big things coming out of the way, I'm going to be challenging David, and we're hopefully going to be trying to get a comprehensive plan RFP hopefully drafted and out to you guys for you to take a look at, hopefully in November. Fingers crossed. We're finally going to hopefully get around to doing that. That's been a long time in the hopper. Council did approve ARPA funds for us to utilize to get that plan updated. So we're excited to have that budget in place, and we'll be moving that forward. We are proceeding with filling the planner 1 position vacated by Madison. We're moving that forward. So if anyone knows of anybody, please send them our way. We'll be happy to get somebody on and want to keep staff sane and keep things moving, but get that position backfilled again as quickly as we can. Public Works Department is coordinating a downtown parking study, which we'll all be participating in and be working with that here over the next several months. So that's certainly taking a look at not only our ramps, but also our surface lots, our on-street parking areas, trying to make some context in terms of what's new development and redevelopment may be happening downtown. Everything from the WPS site to the public market to a couple of the different housing projects that are going to be in the downtown area. Parking is going to be in demand. So we're trying to get an update on that study and exactly where that may be going. So we're excited to move that. And of course, it's budget season. So we're kind of cranking through all of our budgets. And again, this is the easy job for us. All alders get the tough job of reviewing everything and making some decisions on what we have to do on that. But so we're not anticipating anything major in our budget for planning purposes this year, but certainly going to be trying to look and obviously get the positions filled and then seeing some hopefully some staff development in the budget here next year, some more training opportunities perhaps. So with that is my update. Anybody have any questions?
Did I hear you say something about the boss's site?
Yes, that's the 222 Cherry Street. That is actually yep. That's the project. The original intent was hopefully they were going to be maintaining that first level and then building on top of it.
Right.
But further engineering work that was not going to be as viable as originally hoped. So the folks have probably seen in the paper, a lot of efforts to try to keep them downtown. I think they've actually made the business decision to move to De Pere, actually. So along by 140 years, I think, was a business for downtown. So certainly we're disappointed in the decision, but we certainly respect their decision on that. We know that I certainly our economic development staff, chamber, on Broadway, downtown Green Bay, all kinds of folks try to reach out to them and try to offer some assistance. But for a variety of reasons, I guess it just made sense that they're probably going to be leaving downtown. So unfortunate, but certainly we wish them nothing but the best going forward. And obviously, so we are excited about the additional housing units that will be coming with that project. So it'll probably be a 5-6 story building on that site, whereas the single story building point, yeah. So we're excited about the density. We wish it would have worked out to be able to keep them as part of the project, but sometimes that's just what happens. So.
All right, well,
Neil,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What is it? The bosses? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Bosses on Cherry.
Yeah, Bosses is the news, the kind of the news periodical store of cigars and magazines, the single story building. Yep. So long-term tenant there, but so sad to see them go, but we wish them nothing but the best of luck. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Neil. Anyone else have any questions? Go ahead.
A quick question: if there was any further discussion about returning to in-person meetings for the Planning Commission?
Oh.
At this point, I think the last time we as staff had certainly reached out and asked them, they said virtual was certainly working for the meantime. I do know that we are making, certainly obviously we always have the opportunity of going into the council chambers for a hybrid meeting or if an in-person, if anybody wants to. We're also having, I think actually as we speak, I think today here in 610 on the 6th floor in City Hall where RDA usually meets, I do believe they had equipment installed today that would also allow for hybrid meetings in that room now as well. So really it is the discretion of this body in terms of how they would like to proceed. Certainly staff is prepared to accommodate whatever this body's wishes are. So.
Yep, and this is David. Yes, they were in there today. So we were kind of waiting on that, I think, even to bring it up because there's conflict in the council chambers on Plan Commission night frequently. But 604, which is your common room, Michael, you wouldn't know that since you weren't in there yet, but in the room that we usually be in, they're upgrading it right now to be able to do everything hybrid. So, yeah. As you can tell, all the staffers are here pretty much still.
All right. All right. Well, thank you very much, Neil. And then it looks like the date of the next meeting is October 24th, 2022.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Commissioner Praddock to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you October 24th.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.